Hey there, have you ever had a neighbor who just loved to make trouble? I mean, someone who's always poking their nose where it doesn't belong. Well, get ready because this story is super crazy. It's about a guy named Sarah, a totally normal dude who just wanted to chill, and a lady named Karen who acted like she was the queen of the whole neighborhood. So here's a question for you. What do you think happens when a super nosy neighbor picks a fight with the wrong guy? Now drop your guess in the comments below. I can't wait to see what you think. Oh, and if you like wild stories like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next one. Okay, let's dive in. It was a super hot day in July, like the kind of hot where you feel like you're melting into a puddle. Sarah was sitting in his front yard trying to stay cool. He had a little electric fan plugged in and it was buzzing softly, blowing a nice breeze his way. He was sipping on some cold lemonade, just relaxing. You know, a regular summer day, or at least that's what he thought. Sarah's yard was pretty simple. He had a small house with a green lawn, a couple of flowers by the porch, and a big shady tree where he liked to sit. He wasn't fancy or anything, just a guy who liked to keep things easy. He'd wave at neighbors when they walked by, and sometimes he'd chat with them about the weather or their dogs. Everyone liked Sarah because he was friendly and didn't cause any drama. But across the street, that's where Karen lived. Oh boy, Karen was something else. She wasn't just any neighbor, she was the boss of the HOA. That's the group that makes rules for the neighborhood, like what color you can paint your house or how tall your grass can grow. Karen loved being in charge. She walked around with her head held high like she owned every single house on the block. Her own house was perfect, with bright white paint, super neat bushes, and not a single weed in sight. She'd stand on her porch, watching everyone, waiting for someone to break one of her rules. That day, Sarah was minding his own business. His fan was humming, the lemonade was sweet, and he was thinking about maybe taking a nap under the tree. He didn't know it yet, but Karen was staring at him from her window. Her eyes were sharp, like a hawk spotting a mouse. And what was she staring at? That little fan. Yup, that's right. To Karen, that fan wasn't just a fan, it was a big problem. In her mind, it was breaking some kind of rule she'd made up. She didn't like anything that wasn't perfect, and Sarah's fan, it was not perfect to her. Now let's talk about Sarah for a second. He wasn't the kind of guy who got mad easily. He was calm, like a still pond. If someone cut him off in traffic, he'd just shrug. If his pizza came with the wrong toppings, he'd eat it anyway. But Sarah wasn't a pushover either. Deep down, he had a spark, a little fire that came out when someone pushed him too far. And Karen, she was about to push him way too far. See, what Karen didn't know was that Sarah had a secret. Not a bad secret, like he was a spy or anything, but something nobody in the neighborhood knew about him. He was really, really good at figuring things out. Like if you lost your keys, Sarah could help you find them. If you forgot a password, he'd guess it in 2 seconds. He was smart in a quiet way, and he didn't brag about it. That's what made him different. While Karen was loud and bossy, Sarah was sneaky smart, watching and waiting. So there he was, sitting with his fan, not even thinking about Karen. The sun was blazing, and the air was so hot it felt like breathing soup. Sarah's fan wasn't fancy, it was just a little plastic one he got at the store for $10, but it did the job. It kept him cool, and that's all he cared about. He leaned back in his chair, took another sip of lemonade, and closed his eyes for a second. Life was good. Meanwhile, Karen was fuming. She stood at her window, her arms crossed, her lips pressed tight. To her, that fan was like a big red flag waving in her face. She thought it made the neighborhood look messy. She thought it was against the rules, her rules. And Karen hated when people didn't follow her rules. She'd spent years making sure every house looked just right, every lawn was mowed, every mailbox was shiny. And now here was Sarah, messing it all up with his dumb little fan. Karen didn't know Sarah very well. She'd seen him around, sure, but she never bothered to talk to him. To her, he was just that guy who lived across the street. She didn't know how smart he was or how he wasn't scared of her like some of the other neighbors. All she knew was that fan had to go. and if Sarah wouldn't move it, she'd make him move it. Oh, Karen had no idea what she was starting. The truth is, the neighborhood wasn't perfect, no matter how hard Karen tried to make it seem that way. People had their own lives, their own problems. There was Mr. Thompson, who forgot to take his trash cans in sometimes. There was Mrs. Lopez, whose dog barked a little too loud. And there was Sarah, who just wanted to stay cool on a hot day. But to Karen, anything less than perfect was a disaster, and she was ready to start a war over it. Sarah, though, he wasn't looking for a fight. He wasn't trying to make anyone mad. He was just a guy with a fan trying to enjoy his summer. But sometimes trouble finds you even when you're not looking for it, and that's exactly what was about to happen. Karen was planning something big, something that would shake up the whole block. She thought she was so clever, thought she had all the power. But Sarah, he had a few tricks up his sleeve, too. Picture this: the street was quiet, except for the hum of Sarah's fan and the occasional chirp of a bird. Kids were inside, hiding from the heat. Neighbors were at work or napping. It felt like the whole world was moving in slow motion. Sarah stretched his legs out, feeling the breeze from the fan tickle his face. He smiled to himself, thinking about how nice it was to just relax. He had no clue that Karen was about to turn his peaceful day upside down. Across the street, Karen grabbed her phone. Her fingers moved fast, like she was on a mission. She wasn't just going to complain to Sarah, she was going bigger than that. She was going to make sure he learned his lesson. She thought she was so smart, so in control. But here's the thing about people like Karen: they never see the storm coming until it's too late. Sarah took another sip of his lemonade, the ice clinking in the glass. He didn't know it yet, but this was the last calm moment he'd have for a while. Trouble was brewing, and it was coming fast. Karen's eyes were still locked on that fan, like it was the worst thing she'd ever seen. To her, it wasn't just a fan, it was a challenge, and Karen never backed down from a challenge. But Sarah, he wasn't just any guy. He was ready for whatever Karen was about to throw at him, even if he didn't know it yet. That little fan, it was about to start a battle that would change the neighborhood forever. And Karen, she was about to learn that picking a fight with the wrong person can backfire in a big way. So what do you think Karen's going to do next? And how do you think Sarah's going to handle it? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'm so excited to hear them. And don't forget to subscribe if you want to find out what happens next in this crazy story. Karen wasn't like other neighbors. Nope, she was the boss of the HOA. That's the group that makes all the rules for the neighborhood. And boy, did Karen love rules. She had rules for everything. No loud music, no messy grass, no leaving your bike on the driveway. If you broke one, she'd be at your door faster than you could say oops. And guess what? She even made up a rule that said no fans in the yard. Yup, you heard that right, no fans. Nobody knew why because, well, it wasn't a real rule. Karen just decided it was. That hot July day, Karen was in a bad mood. She stood on her porch, her eyes squinting across the street at Sarah's little electric fan. To her, that fan was like a big, ugly monster ruining her perfect neighborhood. She crossed her arms and huffed, her face all red and grumpy. Finally, she couldn't take it anymore. She marched right over to Sarah's yard, her flip-flops slapping the pavement. Her hands were on her hips, and she looked like she was ready to start a fight. Sarah was just sitting there, sipping his lemonade, the fan blowing a cool breeze. He wasn't bothering anyone. But when Karen got close, she pointed at the fan and yelled, "That thing is an eyesore. It's ugly and it's against the rules. You better move it right now or I'm calling the cops." Sarah looked up, a little surprised. He blinked at her, trying to figure out if she was serious. "It's just a fan, Karen," he said calmly. "It's super hot out here, like 90 degrees. I need it to stay cool." His voice was nice and polite, but inside he was starting to feel a tiny bit annoyed. I mean, who gets mad about a fan? But Karen, she didn't care what Sarah said. She wasn't listening at all. Her face got even redder and she waved her hand like she was shooing away a fly. "Don't talk back to me," she snapped. "This neighborhood has standards and your fan is ruining everything." Then she pulled out her phone and started dialing, muttering under her breath about how Sarah was a problem and how she'd fix this. Sarah watched her, his eyebrows raised. He didn't say anything else, just took another sip of his lemonade. On the outside, he looked super calm, like he didn't have a care in the world. But deep down, oh, he was starting to get a little mad. Not the kind of mad where you yell or stomp your feet, but the kind where you feel a spark inside you, a spark that says, "I'm not going to let this slide." Sarah wasn't someone who liked fights, but he also wasn't the kind of guy who'd let someone boss him around for no reason. And Karen, she was about to find that out. Have you ever had to deal with someone like Karen? Someone who's super bossy and makes a big deal out of nothing? Drop your story in the comments, I'd love to hear it. After Karen stomped back to her house, Sarah sat there for a minute thinking. He looked at his fan, still humming away, and shook his head. "A fan," he said to himself, almost laughing. "She's losing it over a fan." But even though he tried to brush it off, that spark of irritation was still there. He didn't like how Karen talked to him like he was some kid who didn't matter. He didn't like how she acted like she owned the whole street. And he really didn't like that she was threatening to call the cops over something so silly. Across the street, Karen was still on her phone, packing back and forth on her porch. She was talking loud enough for Sarah to hear bits and pieces. "Yes, officer," she said. "It's about a neighbor breaking rules. No, it's serious. It's ruining our neighborhood." Sarah rolled his eyes. He knew the police had better things to do than worry about a fan. But Karen, she was dead serious. To her, this was war. The thing about Karen was, she wasn't used to people standing up to her. Most of the neighbors were a little scared of her. If she told them to move their trash cans or repaint their fence, they'd do it just to keep her quiet. She'd been the HOA boss for years, and she loved the power. She loved walking around, pointing out what was wrong, making people feel small. But Sarah wasn't like the other neighbors. He didn't care about her fancy title or her loud voice. To him, she was just a lady who needed to chill out. As the sun got hotter, Sarah leaned back in his chair and watched the street. A few kids rode by on their bikes, laughing. A dog barked somewhere down the block. Everything seemed normal, except for Karen, who was still glaring at him from her porch. Sarah could feel her eyes on him, like lasers trying to burn a hole through his fan. It was kind of funny, but also kind of annoying. He didn't want trouble, but he wasn't going to let Karen push him around either. What Karen didn't know was that Sarah was already starting to think ahead. He wasn't just sitting there doing nothing. His brain was working like a puzzle coming together. See, Sarah was really good at noticing things, little details other people missed. And he'd noticed something about Karen. She wasn't as perfect as she pretended to be. Nobody else in the neighborhood dared to question her, but Sarah. He was different. He wasn't afraid to dig a little deeper. For now, though, he kept quiet. He didn't yell back at Karen or make a big scene. He just sat there, his fan spinning, his lemonade sweating in the heat. But that spark inside him was growing. He wasn't going to let Karen win, not this time. He didn't know exactly what he was going to do yet, but he knew one thing for sure. Karen was messing with the wrong guy. The air was thick with tension, like the calm before a big storm. Karen thought she had everything under control. She thought Sarah was just some lazy guy who'd give up and move his fan, but she was wrong. Sarah was watching, waiting, and thinking. And soon, Karen was going to learn that her rules didn't mean as much as she thought. So what do you think? Is Karen going to keep pushing Sarah, or is Sarah going to surprise her? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to hit that like button if you're ready for the next part of this story. The next few days got wild. Karen wasn't slowing down, she was turning up the heat big time. Every morning, Sarah would find a new note taped to his front door. The notes were mean, written in big, angry letters. "Take that ugly fan away," one said. "You're ruining the neighborhood." Said another. One even had a threat: "Remove that fan or else." Sarah would just shake his head and toss the notes in the trash. He didn't like them, but he wasn't going to let Karen scare him. Karen didn't stop at notes, though. Oh no, she went even further. She started sneaking around Sarah's yard with her phone, snapping pictures of his little fan like it was some kind of crime. Click, 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 she'd stand there, zooming in, acting like she was a detective building a case. Sarah caught her doing it once. He was watering his flowers when he saw her hiding behind a bush, her phone pointed right at his fan. "Really, Karen?" he called out, trying not to laugh. She jumped, her face turning red, and scurried back to her house without saying a word. Sarah stayed super calm on the outside. He'd smile, wave at other neighbors, and keep sipping his lemonade like nothing was wrong. But inside, he wasn't clueless. He knew Karen was trying to make his life tough, and he wasn't going to just sit there and take it. See, what Karen didn't know was that Sarah had a secret trick up his sleeve. He had a side job, something he was really good at. Let's just say Sarah was a wizard at finding stuff online. Not like games or funny videos, but real stuff. The secrets, things people didn't want anyone to know. While Karen was busy writing her nasty notes and taking her sneaky photos, Sarah was doing his own kind of work. He wasn't loud about it. He didn't tell anyone what he was up to. He just stayed quiet, watching and thinking. Every time Karen did something mean, Sarah's brain kicked into gear. He started to wonder, what's Karen hiding? Because nobody acts that bossy unless they're trying to keep people from looking too closely at them. And Sarah, he was great at looking closely. One night after the sun went down, Sarah sat at his kitchen table with his laptop. The fan was still outside, humming softly, but he wasn't thinking about it right then. He was focused. His fingers flew over the keyboard as he searched online. He checked websites, read posts, and clicked through pages most people wouldn't even know about. At first, it was just boring stuff: ads for lawnmowers, a lost cat poster, some neighbor complaining about noisy kids. But then he found something good. There was a website where people in the neighborhood could talk about stuff, kind of like a big group chat but for grown-ups. Sarah scrolled through it, his eyes scanning fast, and then bam, he saw it, a post from someone named Angry Gardener. It said, "Why does Karen get to break the rules? Her house has a big porch that's not allowed." Sarah leaned closer, his heart beating a little faster. He kept reading. Another person, Dogwalker22, wrote, "Yeah, I saw that porch too. It's against HOA rules, but nobody says anything because she's the boss." Sarah's mouth turned up in a tiny smile. This was juicy. Karen wasn't as perfect as she acted. She always went around telling everyone else what to do: mow your lawn, paint your mailbox, move your fan, but her own house was breaking the rules. Oh, that was too good. Sarah kept digging. He found more posts, more whispers. People were mad about Karen. They said she acted like a queen, but her fancy porch was a big no-no. Someone even said they'd told the city about it, and the city was checking it out. Sarah leaned back in his chair and whispered to himself, "Oh, Karen, you're playing a dangerous game." He wasn't mad anymore, not like before. Now he was excited. He felt like a kid who just found a hidden treasure map. Karen thought she could push him around, but she didn't know who she was messing with. Sarah wasn't just some guy with a fan. He was smart and he was patient. And now he had something on Karen, something big. The next morning, Karen was at it again. Sarah stepped outside to grab his newspaper, and there she was, standing on her porch, staring at his fan. She didn't say anything, but her eyes were like daggers. Sarah just waved, all friendly-like, and went back inside. He wasn't going to let her know what he'd found, not yet. He wanted to keep it a secret, like a card he'd play at just the right moment. As the days went on, Karen got bolder. She stopped just leaving notes and started knocking on Sarah's door. Bang, 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 she'd stand there, arms crossed, saying stuff like, "I'm giving you one more chance to move that fan." Sarah would just nod and say, "Okay, Karen, I'll think about it." But he wasn't thinking about moving the fan. He was thinking about that porch. He was thinking about those posts. He was thinking about how Karen wasn't as powerful as she thought. The neighborhood started to notice the drama. Neighbors would peek out their windows, watching Karen march around like she owned the place. Some of them whispered to each other, "What's she so mad about? It's just a fan." Others were too scared to say anything because Karen had a way of making people nervous. But Sarah, he wasn't nervous. He was calm like a cat watching a mouse. Every mean note, every sneaky photo, every loud knock on his door, it just made him more sure. Karen was digging herself into a hole, and he was happy to let her keep digging. By now, Sarah's spark of irritation had turned into something else. It wasn't just about the fan anymore. It was about Karen thinking she could control everyone. It was about her acting like she was better than him. Sarah didn't want to fight, but he wasn't going to let her win either. He kept his laptop close, checking that website every night, looking for more clues. And every time he found something new about Karen's porch, his smile got a little bigger. The air felt heavy, like something big was coming. Karen was planning her next move, thinking she had Sarah right where she wanted him. But Sarah was planning too. He wasn't loud or showy about it. He was quiet, sneaky, smart. And he knew something Karen didn't. The truth always comes out one way or another. What do you think Sarah's going to do with what he found? Drop your guess in the comments. I can't wait to see what you think. And if you're loving this story, hit that like button and subscribe for more. The next morning, things got crazy. Karen wasn't playing around anymore. She went all in. Sarah was just waking up, sipping his coffee, when he heard a loud noise outside. Sirens. A police car pulled up right in front of his house, its red and blue lights flashing. Sarah peeked out his window, wondering what was going on. And there was Karen standing on his lawn, pointing at his little fan like it was the worst thing in the world. "Officer," Karen yelled, waving her arms. "This man is breaking every rule. That fan is ruining our neighborhood." She was so loud, neighbors started poking their heads out to see what the fuss was about. Her face was red and she looked like she thought she'd won. To her, this was it. Sarah was finally going to get in trouble and she'd be the hero of the block. Sarah stepped outside, super calm. He wasn't yelling or acting scared. He just stood there on his porch, holding his phone in one hand and a glass of lemonade in the other. The fan was still humming softly behind him, blowing a cool breeze. The police officer, a tall guy with a tired face, climbed out of his car. He didn't look happy. "What's this about a fan?" he asked, scratching his head. It was clear he didn't want to be there. Who calls the cops over something so small? Karen kept going, talking fast. "It's against the rules," she said. "He's making the whole street look bad. You need to make him stop." She pointed at Sarah like he was a criminal. The officer sighed and looked at Sarah. "Is this your fan, sir?" he asked, sounding bored. Sarah nodded, still calm. "Yup, it's mine, just keeping me cool." He didn't raise his voice or get mad. He just stood there, sipping his lemonade, acting like this was no big deal. But inside, Sarah was ready. He'd been waiting for this moment. Karen thought she was so smart, calling the cops, thinking she'd scare him. But Sarah wasn't scared. He had a plan. The officer turned to Karen. "Ma'am, I don't think a fan is worth all this," he said. "Maybe you two can work it out." But Karen wasn't having it. "No," she shouted. "He needs to follow the rules. I'm the HOA president and I say that fan has to go." She crossed her arms, looking proud, like she thought the officer would just do whatever she wanted. That's when Sarah spoke up, his voice nice and steady. "Officer, before you go, can you check something for me?" he asked. The cop raised an eyebrow, curious. Karen froze, her eyes narrowing. She didn't know what Sarah was up to, but she didn't like it. Sarah held out his phone, tapping the screen to pull up a file. "I found something you might want to see," he said, handing it over. The officer took the phone and started reading. His eyes got wide, like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. He scrolled a little, then looked up at Karen. Ma'am, he said, his voice serious now, is this about your house? Karen's mouth opened, but no words came out. Her face went super pale, like she'd seen a ghost. What do you mean? She stammered, her hands shaking a little. Sarah leaned against his porch railing, still calm as ever. He didn't need to yell or make a scene. The truth was doing all the work for him. See that file on his phone? It was a gold mine. Sarah had spent days digging online, finding stuff about Karen, and what he found was big. Karen's perfect house, the one she was so proud of, had a problem, a huge one. She added a fancy new porch and some extra rooms, but she never got permission. Those changes were against the rules, big rules, not just HOA stuff, but city stuff. And guess what? People had been complaining about it for months. The officer kept reading, his face getting more serious. Says here there's an investigation already going on, he said, looking at Karen, about illegal renovations at your address. Karen's eyes got huge. That's a mistake, she said, her voice all wobbly. I didn't do anything wrong, but the officer wasn't buying it. He handed Sarah's phone back and turned to Karen. Ma'am, we weren't here for this fan. We got a call about your house. Someone tipped us off, and now I'm thinking you've got some explaining to do. Karen looked like she wanted to disappear. Her hands were shaking and her mouth kept opening and closing, but nothing came out. The neighbors watching from their windows were whispering now, pointing at her. For weeks, Karen had been acting like she was the boss, telling everyone what to do, yelling about Sarah's fan. But now, the truth was out. She wasn't perfect. She was the one breaking rules, big ones. Sarah just stood there, his fan still humming, the breeze feeling extra nice in the hot sun. He took a slow sip of his lemonade and looked at Karen. Told you it was just a fan, he said, his voice quiet but strong. He didn't need to shout or rub it in. The look on Karen's face said it all. She knew she'd messed up. The officer pulled out a notebook and started writing stuff down. Ma'am, you're going to need to come with me to answer some questions, he said to Karen. She shook her head, still trying to argue. This is ridiculous, she said. He's the one causing trouble, but the officer just pointed to his car. Let's go, he said, and Karen had no choice. She dragged her feet, her head down as she followed him. Sarah watched it all, feeling a little spark of pride. He hadn't yelled or fought dirty. He just used his brain, found the truth, and let it do the talking. Karen thought she could push him around, but she picked the wrong guy. Now everyone could see who she really was. What do you think about Sarah's big move? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I can't wait to hear what you say. And if you're loving this story, hit that like button and subscribe for more. Karen's days as the HOA queen were done. Finished, over. After the police showed up, they took her to the station to ask her a bunch of questions. The whole neighborhood was talking about it. People stood on their porches, whispering to each other. Did you hear about Karen? They'd say. Her house is in big trouble. It wasn't just talk either. Sarah's phone had all the proof, and it showed something wild. Karen's fancy new porch and extra rooms weren't just against HOA rules, they were dangerous. Like really dangerous. They could have caused problems like fires or walls falling down. The city wasn't happy about it. They sent people to check Karen's house and they found a lot of stuff she'd done wrong. She got hit with fines, big ones. That means she had to pay a ton of money because of her mistakes. And the HOA, they didn't want her as their boss anymore. They told her she had to step down, which means she wasn't in charge of anything now. No more yelling at people about their lawns or mailboxes. No more scary notes on doors. Karen's power was gone. The neighbors couldn't believe it. For years, they'd been a little afraid of Karen. She was so bossy, always telling them what to do. If she didn't like something, she'd make a big fuss until people gave in. But now, they weren't scared anymore. They started talking, sharing stories about how Karen had been mean to them too. One lady said Karen fined her for planting pink flowers. Another guy said she yelled at him for parking his car too close to her driveway. Everyone had a story, and now they felt free to tell them. And Sarah? Oh, he was the hero of the block. People walked by his house and smiled. Some even stopped to say thanks. "You did it, Sarah," they'd say. "You stood up to her." Kids on bikes would wave and old folks nodded like they were proud. Sarah's little fan kept spinning in his yard, and it was like a trophy now. Everyone knew about it, the fan that started it all. But Sarah didn't act like a big shot. He didn't brag or show off. He just sat in his chair, sipping cold lemonade, the fan blowing a nice breeze. When people thanked him, he'd just grin and say, "Sometimes you gotta let people dig their own holes." That meant he didn't have to fight Karen or be mean back. He just let her make her own mistakes, and they caught up with her. The neighborhood felt different now. It was happier, like a weight was gone. People started doing little things they'd been afraid to do before, like putting up fun decorations or letting their grass grow a tiny bit longer. Nobody was worried about Karen watching them anymore. Sarah liked seeing that. He didn't want to be the new boss or anything. He just wanted to chill and enjoy his summer, same as always. What do you think about Sarah being the hero? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear. And if you liked this story, hit that like button and subscribe for more. Life can be tough sometimes, can't it? There are moments when it feels like someone is trying to make things hard for you, just like Karen did to Sarah. But Sarah's story shows us something super important. You don't always have to yell, fight, or act mean to win. Sometimes staying calm, being smart, and letting the truth shine is the best way to handle things. It's like when you're playing a game and instead of getting mad, you figure out a clever move that helps you come out on top. That's what Sarah did, and it's a lesson we can all learn from. Think about it for a second. Have you ever met someone who tried to push you around? Maybe they made fun of you, took something that was yours, or just acted like they were better than everyone else. It's not fun, right? It can make you feel small or upset. But here's the cool part. You don't have to let them win. You don't have to be loud or mean back. Sarah showed us that being patient and thinking carefully can be way stronger than getting angry. It's like having a secret superpower, staying cool and letting the other person's bad choices catch up with them. Let's talk about why this matters. When someone is being unkind, it's easy to want to fight back right away. You might want to yell or say something mean to make them stop, but sometimes that just makes things worse. It's like adding more fire to a fight. It burns hotter and nobody feels good. Instead, if you take a deep breath and think, you can find a better way. Sarah didn't try to get even with Karen by being sneaky or rude. She just kept being herself, kind, honest, and smart. And guess what? That's what made the difference. Karen's own actions showed everyone who she really was, and Sarah didn't have to do anything extra to prove it. Now let's think about you. Have you ever had a moment where you felt like someone was trying to make you feel bad?